Okay, if you want to go from being a beginner guitarist to an intermediate level and beyond, I've got 5 ways to help you get there fast, and you can start practicing them right now. I'm Steve, I hope you're doing totally awesome. So I've taught more than 100 guitar lessons here on my YouTube channel, and when you do that, you notice these patterns and techniques that repeat over and over again, but they're the fundamentals, they're the building blocks to really take your guitar playing to the next level. So in this video, I'm gonna go through all 5 of them, and I'm gonna demonstrate them using a bunch of songs that you know and love. So hit like, hit subscribe, and let's just get to it. All right, the first one are hammer-ons and pull-offs. I'll demonstrate it with I Remember You by Skid Row. So a hammer-on is when you hit a string, in this case the open A string, and you hammer on a finger. So you plop it down on the 2nd fret right there, and it goes like that. Then you go to a C chord, this modified C chord. So I'm hitting the open B string, hammering on to the 3rd fret, and then I'm pulling off. So pull off is when you pull off a string. So I'm only hitting one pick over here, and it's making 3 different notes. Then you go to the open G string, like that. I've got a full video on that song, check that out. And another more complicated version is, or song that demonstrates this, is Over the Hills and Far Away by Led Zeppelin. Filled with hammer-ons and pull-offs. That one goes from the open G, hammers onto the 2nd fret right there, pulls it off, goes to the 4th fret of the D string, and pulls it off, and then goes to a G chord. And that next part is even more complicated. And even if you're not ready for that song, so many others have little hammer-ons and pull-offs all the time. Okay, the next ones are walk-downs and walk-ups. And if you're like, what are those? Well, I'll show you with Carolina in My Mind by James Taylor. So I've got videos on both of these. Check out my detailed videos, but in this case, we're in a D major, and you're using these notes to connect chords together in a really beautiful way. The notes are typically parts of scales, so it goes like D major, and you put this finger on the 4th fret of the A string, then the 2nd fret of that A string, and then the open A string, then a G major, goes down to the 2nd fret of the low E string, and keeps walking it down all the way to the E minor. And that song is filled with them, and it's amazing. Another example is when you're doing Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd, you know, it goes. So that does a C major, and quickly moves to the 2nd fret of the A string, to an A minor, keeps walking down with a G note right there on the 3rd fret of the E string, and then an E minor. And I've got a video on Comfortably Numb as well for you to try it out. All right, the 3rd technique is playing the same chord, but in multiple places or different ways. For example, Bye Bye Love by the Everly Brothers. So I went from a G to a D, but then you slide up to, that's also a D. That's a D chord. You're basically playing an F major shape, but you're up here. So instead of just getting stuck playing a D in the same place, a D major in the same place, or a G major all the time, you can learn how to play it in different areas. So here's a D, here's another D, and here's another D. And when you do, you can, combine them and make it really beautiful. Another good example is Mary Jane's Last Dance. That, right? And then it goes Last Dance with Mary Jane, E minor to A major. Well, when it goes to the A major, it goes. Well, what are those notes right there? It's A major. Well, he slides up to basically another version of the A major, and then it does another slide, which is basically another version of the A major. So when you learn how to play the same chord in multiple areas, it can go a long way to sounding great. All right, the 4th technique is to start using your pinky. A lot of guitarists only use these fingers. They never use their pinky, and they don't build up strength. But a great song to practice on is Peace of Mind by Boston. It goes. Very Very cool. You're beginning here on the 4th fret of the A string to the 5th fret, and then you need that pinky to go to the, sorry, that was the 6th fret. Then you go to the pinky to the 7th fret. Then this first finger right here, that's on the 4th fret of the D string. That finger on the 6th fret of the A string, and then you put that pinky down again on the 7th fret of the A, back down the 6th fret of the A, and the pinky on the 7th fret of the E string, and back up to the 4th fret of the A string. It's complicated a little bit, but it's not that hard if you just take it slow. I've got a full lesson on this one here. Very cool. If you begin using your pinky, you'll be in good shape. Now, you'll also need it like for the blues. When you're playing the blues, right here, you don't need it. Or rockabilly. But what happens when you want to do it in a G major instead of an A or an E? Well, you're going to need to go. So I'm really stretching across, what, 5 or 6 frets here, and you go. It's transferable everywhere. Well, the way you do that, you need to be able to hit a couple notes and your pinky. So check out my video on the blues and another one on rockabilly. All right, and the number one tip and recommendation I've got to get out of the beginner zone, this is really crucial, I'm going to do a completely separate video on this, is to integrate emotion and dynamics and energy into your playing. I'll give you some examples. This is Summer of '69 by Bryan Adams. The boring way would be got my first real 6th string, bought it at 5 and dime, standing on your mother's porch, all that kind of stuff. But what does he do? He uses palm muting and volume controls and things like this. Amazing, of course, a lot of picking techniques, but for the most part, he's interjecting emotion. Another good example is Born to Run by Bruce Springsteen. So I start off with this explosion in E major, and then I go down here to the low notes, like palm muting. And then it goes into this sort of tender moment real quick. So it goes low, high volume control and all that. And it's especially critical when you're doing like ballads or quiet stuff where you go quiet for a moment, but then there's this emotional moment with these volume swells, like maybe Faithfully by Journey. So check out my video coming on that and let me know what you think about this. These 5 techniques, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll catch you next time for some more helpful lessons. See ya.